Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel as Mike's Talks and Thoughts here, back again with another TV series review. And today we had a matchup between Banshee and Mindhunter, and as you can see by the title, Mindhunter ended up taking the win here on the community poll. But before we get into that, again, I would like to announce to any new viewers for this TV series review, we go through the process of synopsis, thoughts on the show, one show recommendation, as well as a tier rating for the show. And it's also great to be talking about Mindhunter here, as Dahmer is really huge at the time I'm recording this video, so I definitely feel like that was one of the things that helped propel Mindhunter to winning this vote. But yeah, here, starting out with the synopsis for Mindhunter. So Mindhunter was a show that ran from 2017 to 2019. It had 19 total episodes, and the show was created by Joe Penhall, with some influence by David Fincher. And the story takes place with the FBI here and these two agents, Holden Ford and Bill Tench here, and their discoveries and research into what makes a serial killer tick, or what are the traits or qualities that a serial killer has. And what they do is they go around to all these different prisons across the country and they interview all these different famous serial killers and we get to see just their interactions with them and seeing how they connect. And we see also as well the plot points as well, getting back into the story where they are able to ask these questions and have it tie into the main story. It's a really interesting show. I think if you really like psychological shows that make you think, shows that have really witty dialogue, and shows that of course follow the serial killer scope, in Mindhunter in that way is just such a crazy show. So yeah, that's a little bit of synopsis on Mindhunter. I will be going into spoilers now for Mindhunter, so if you've not seen the show in its entirety, definitely skip to the end and then come back once you have watched Mindhunter to watch the full thoughts on this video. But yeah, let's get into the thoughts on Mindhunter. Mindhunter is just a show that makes you think. It's definitely a show that is psychological in nature. And like I mentioned in the synopsis, Holden Ford and Bill Tench, I think they work really well as partners. You know, you see Holden being the determined new FBI agent who wants to prove himself and get a lot of great work done. And then you see, of course, Bill Tench, and you see his sort of family life, and you see how he's just so cranky and complaining and has a lot of these problems here. Of course, the show takes place back in the 1970s, 1980s timeline here. So a little bit of different scenery here, but of course we get to see the infamous serial killers that a lot of people know. They also bring on a lot of other great actors and actresses on the show, a lot of great side characters that we see pop in and out of episodes. And of course, Anna Torv playing Wendy here on the show. She was a nice addition to the show as well. Someone who's kind of that third main character who bounces ideas around, sometimes goes and listens to, of course, the serial killers, but kind of does a lot of work behind the scenes. I think that she's also plays such an integral part into this story as well. And Mindhunter is just such a fascinating show where you get to see, of course, them talking to these famous serial killers. We see in the first opening couple episodes, Edmund Kemper, one of the craziest and physical beasts we have seen as a serial killer, like 6'9", 350 pounds, insane. I think they made a great acting decision with the guy who they brought on. I love the conversation he has with Holden Ford, Edmund and Holden. You see Edmund's IQ on display here. I love the dialogue between him. He was one of my favorites in the show here. And then also, like I said, tying plot points in, of course, the whole family situation and killings that take place in the middle of season 1 really ties back to the serial killers that they are revolving around and interviewing. We see how Holden really wants to get a grasp on this and fund this research and fund this big project that can help the FBI and help out with serial killers. And then Bill, of course, is very hesitant at first, and once he gets his hands and is able to be with Holden and do the interviews together, I think they make a great team here. Of course, recording a lot of their lectures. We also see characters like Jerry Brudos, another serial killer who takes a lot of precedent in season 1 here. Probably, like I said, the two most infamous, Edmund Kemper and Jerry Brudos for season 1. And I think they do a really great job of building those two. And then the crazy scene with Edmund at the end of season 1 and him going after Holden, and this whole dynamic Edmund Kemper is really the standout of the first season for the serial killer side. Season 1 was very solid, but for me, honestly, Season 2 just took it up to that extra notch. Season 2 is really great because there's so many overarching things that happen from Season 1 that they build upon Season 2, and then there's also a lot of new storylines. We see the overarching story this whole season of the Atlanta child murders, which was a huge story, of course, going around the news in the 80s, and Wayne Williams absolutely phenomenally played. Loved that, and I love their little interactions and trying to find out who this is, and it really keeps you hooked all season. And then I also really like, of course, them still going around and interviewing serial killers. In this season, the infamous ones we see, of course, Son of Sam and Charles Manson. Charles Manson episode absolutely goes insane. But like I said, the Atlanta child murder mystery is what really takes precedent of this entire season, and I really like that about this. And I think it's so captivating, and finding out about this and following that whole case pretty much. You see how it starts off with just these few ladies here whose sons were taken or killed by the Atlanta child murder, of course, Wayne Williams, and just them trying to pick off the pieces and trying to figure out this mystery, and then finally come to the conclusion, but they can't really point evidence on them, and then they have to get evidence. It's just a crazy, wild roller coaster here. I also really love this idea of the whole overarching theme of the story, and this is something that I wish could have been built upon more. I mentioned how this has 2 seasons, but this is a show that should have definitely gone on longer. I wouldn't say it was canceled per se, but it kind of just didn't finish out. David Fincher was doing a whole bunch of other stuff, and they just never really got around to making a 3rd season, because there's a lot of plot points that kind of are left unanswered. You know, the whole Atlanta child murders is the main plot point that wraps up season 2 and kind of the overarching story, but I would have loved to seen even more of these infamous serial killers just being interviewed. And the one big question I have, and I think a lot of people had throughout this entire show, was, of course, Bill's son. I mentioned Bill and his family life a little bit in this video so far, but Bill has a son here, an adoptive son who, you know, has these weird traits, serial killer-like traits, but he's trying to raise him good. You know, he raises him as a good person. He wants him to be good and have a good life for his son. And we see this whole dilemma of him being involved, his son, of course, being involved in this murder of a kid. And we see how that really takes a big toll on Bill throughout the entire show. And it really answers back to that question of the whole series, where they are trying to find what makes serial killers tick. Why are they the way that they are? But in this case, we see his adoptive son have these traits, but the parents, you know, aren't teaching him like this. He's not growing up with bad families. Is it something that's instilled with him at birth? Can he be changed? Can he be fixed? Will he continue on? That was one thing that I was always thinking, like, that his son was a serial killer, or was going to be a serial killer, that was going to be the big overarching plot, was Bill and Holden against Bill's own son. I think that would have been great, and it would have made for really great storytelling. Would have been one of the best points of the whole show. But unfortunately, we never did get to that point. So yeah, those are kind of my big things with Mindhunter that I really liked about it. I mentioned some things that I dislike. Honestly, the main things that I dislike are being a little bit slow at points. Of course, that happens a lot of shows. They get slow at points. If you're not into really dialogue-heavy episodes, then Mindhunter is a little bit of a turnoff in that point. You know, for anyone who's seen the show, you know, there's not a lot of action in it. You know, there can be some action at points, but for the most part, it's dialogue-based, it's mental. It's trying to figure out how these serial killers work in a mental way rather than a physical way. And of course, the show not continuing on. It really doesn't, you know, it wraps up good, but it doesn't feel like a series finale. Like, this was a show that should have definitely went on longer than it did, and it's a real shame. That's, again, one of the big plot points that brings it down, is not having that proper storytelling that this show had so much promise in building. Season 1 was a good season. I think season 2 was a great to amazing season. So for me, it really kind of balances out in that, like, great tier of show here. So yeah, now here with the one show recommendation. So Mindhunter here, a great show and a great serial killer show. You know, the obvious pick here is Dexter, but I'm actually going to go with Dahmer here. This is a show, what I'm currently filming, is really going off on Netflix. I feel like it's a great show for you if you like that whole serial killer vibe. Definitely one that really immerses you in the serial killer life in the world if you're really into the serial killer documentary and sort of stuff like that. And for the Mindhunter rating here, on of course my tier rating scale, I'm going to have it at a great tier. Mindhunter is a great show. I don't think it reaches those levels of GOAT or elite, but it has those moments. It has those elite moments in the show. I think that season 1 is kind of on the good tier, and then season 2 is like on the elite great tier. So for me, it averages out on great tier. It is a great show, and I definitely feel like you should give it a chance if you have not seen it yet. It has a lot of great ratings. I think a lot of people would really appreciate, and of course, if you've seen it, you know how well done it was. So yeah, that's gonna do it here for the Mindhunter review. I hope you guys enjoy, and definitely check my playlist over here for other TV series reviews that I've done on the channel, and definitely give some recommendations for more in the future. I definitely look forward to making more for you guys. So yeah, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take care. Peace out.